Alright, hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be painting Swamp Thing. This is going to be a watercolor painting. It is about to be New Year's in about 4 hours. So I thought it'd be a good way to cap off the year is just to go out with a painting. It's going to be really challenging for me because I am not a terribly great watercolor artist. But I have here a drawing I'm basing it off of drawing I did of Swamp Thing with Copic markers. This is my first Copic marker drawing, and I quite like how it turned out. I did a Batman, which I did not enjoy as much. But, you know, I really enjoy the work of Bernie Wrightson. I think he's such a master at what he did. And he kind of brought the whole horror medium along with him with his ink work. And I don't know, I just wanted to pay homage to someone who kind of really paved the way for a lot of artists. He also did the illustrated works for the Frankenstein novel, which are incredible. He did that as a labor of love. You know, I think over the course of like 7 or 8 years or something like that, of just building up drawings for the visualization of the novel. And I think it looks so cool. Those are like some of the best ink works you'll ever see, maybe the best in my opinion, but you know, not everyone's going to share that opinion. So I'm going in here, I wetted the paper and I'm going in with like a bright light green because, you know, when you're doing watercolor, you need to work from light to dark. And so that's really what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to get down a kind of base color that could act as a highlight if I leave it in the end without touching it. It's a pretty watery mix for the color on the palette. And when you work on a palette, again, I don't have a lot of experience, but I heard once you should get like a clear piece of plexiglass and put a piece of paper underneath it, a white one. That way you can kind of see what the color will look like on the paper itself, and you don't have as much guesswork. So I'm going to leave his muzzle here kind of white for now because I think I want that to almost look like bone, maybe. I might also leave like the edge of his chest and his rib cage here, that sort of bony like color. I like doing these types of drawings. They're like a lot of detail, and it's not great for watercolor, but whatever. I just want to have fun and try really hard. So what I have here is him kind of coming out of the water. This is a tree back here, which I may or may not blast in. We'll see. Just like in the drawing I did here, I have a tree behind him, but I wanted him to be more like emerging and stuck than what I was pulling off in the Copic marker drawing. So yeah, if you're unfamiliar with Bernie Wrightson and his work, I recommend highly searching it up. I'll throw some images up here if they're some of my favorites. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. I'm a little undecided on what to, you know, like for the background. This down here is water, and it'd be pretty simple to make it blue. But I'm not sure what I want to do. Kind of thinking about making it like purple. I got this new purple watercolor here. That actually looks pretty cool. All right. I had to clear space on my camera, so we're back. I didn't really do anything. Water's still wet on the page. I just deleted a bunch of old videos, the Vecna video. It's all on my computer anyway, so I really need to darken this up because this is the inside of this, so it's really going to be pretty dang dark. I'll just use this highly pigmented green here, blue-green. It's not quite Payne's gray, so hopefully Hopefully it kind of stands out from some of the shadow colors I'm using. Oh, that's what I was going to use. I have this raw umber violet, which is like a purple brown that I was going to use for shadows, because I think blues and purples look really killer for shadows. Plus it kind of has a muddy color palette to it, which I think makes sense for Swamp Thing. Sort of implicit in the name, I suppose. I just bought a Blu-ray for the Swamp Thing show that's on the way. I watched most of it a couple years ago when it was on, I think, Tubi for free, and then it happened to be taken off as I was approaching the end, and I thought it was a really good show, actually. Surprisingly good. Like, one of the best comic book type of shows, or maybe the best comic book type of show out there. And, I kind of read that they discontinued it because of how much it cost to produce, which may or may not be true. And, I could see that they had awesome practical effects. The Swamp Thing himself looked incredible. So they did Bernie right some justice. Let's see, I want this to be... There's an awesome watercolor artist named Ito Scares Me on Instagram, and I'm sure other platforms. And he always has these awesome washes, and I don't exactly know how he lands upon the color idea, but they are so good, and I wish I understood how he did it in terms of his color theory. He almost seems to go with like a lighter color, so the shadow, in a way, gets blown out as a highlight, but somehow he just makes it work. So I'm going to go through and just add water and see if it blooms or it does anything cool. Like, I need to get a little more shape in here too. Keep using this dark green for the pockets up here between the vines. I always hate to say it, but I hope you guys paint along or do something to that nature as well. The goal of my channel is really to demystify a lot of, our preconceived notions about art. My journey with it is that I just thought people had an innate ability, which sounds really dumb in hindsight, but it seemed like a natural talent that a lot of people just had, and that is not the case. Maybe there's an element of that to it, and just how talented someone can end up being, but I would say and I'm not good, but it seems to me like people can at least become quite good regardless of their natural ability just from practice. Maybe you won't be like the best of the best or super elite, but I think people can be very good just from effort alone. And I don't know if there's a lot of things you can say that about. There's not a whole lot of maybe there's some physical components to it, like how good you are with a brush or how steady your hand is, but there's just so many other mediums or justifications for why something might look that way, and a lot of times it's considered pretty cool when something's a little shaky or whatever, that's just a component of style. So, if you ever have any reservations about art, I would say get rid of those and just go for it. Because I was so I don't want to use negative language, but I was pretty bad when I started. It was really bad, I thought. Bad enough that I said I don't really want to do it. And I've only been doing this like 3 years now, but I've learned so much in that time. And I think that could be the story for anyone that just devotes some effort to it. And there's so many tutorials on YouTube I learned from just watching a guy kind of do the type of stuff I'm doing, which is just sit down and work through a process, kind of talk about the areas he was struggling in. Because I think that's really important, actually, is to see that it doesn't come easy, especially for people, who have a lot of experience. It's still a struggle, because painting, drawing, all of it is hard. Like, just drawing this hand in semi-perspective, like, I don't even think it's good, but that's really hard to do. And I'm frustrated because I feel like I should be able to do it better. But, it's there are people you'll see who struggle with it, even though they're like professional comic book artists or something. Like, there's just a lot of skill involved. And really all it comes down to is putting in the effort if one wants to. I'm going to add more Payne's Gray to this area. I'm just kind of seeing what colors work. I mean, that's kind of the fun part of watercolor, is just, mixing blues and greens, and I have some brown in there, and I think it's starting to pop out a little bit, at least parts of this rib cage-like thing that I got going on. I think I just hit the microphone and went to scratch my face there. I apologize. Get some of that dark color up in there. I'm kind of just trying to lean back and see. Like, this I really like here, this rib cage looking thing. And that's sort of what you want in watercolor, at least in my... I mean, you can be really precise with it too. I have paintings where I've been precise, but just the hinting of stuff goes such a long way in watercolor. So that's really the goal, at least when I'm doing it. I just want certain areas to draw attention. The eye socket up here, I'm probably just going to do in pen, just full dark black. I could do it with the watercolor brush, and I used to be a little more like, if I'm going to watercolor, then there's not going to be any ink or pencil, but I'm past that now. It takes a lot longer to do it with a watercolor brush, and it doesn't come out as opaque, and that's not really what I'm after. There's no shame in mixed media, doing whatever it takes to get to the result that you want. So I'm going to darken the underside of the arm here, this tricep sort of region. Kind of needs to be darker through here as well a little bit, because we got our, he's not really human anymore, but he is kind of based on some human musculature. So we got the collarbone that comes over here, and so your chest, when you raise it, it kind of has a indent, a roll over the collarbone, and then a bit of a depression. Even if unless you have the upper chest structure of someone like Arnold or something, prime Arnold Schwarzenegger, then you're going to have a bit of a recession there. With that other Swamp Thing drawing, I recorded that as well, and I plan on just doing more of a video on Bernie Wrightson and his works, and so that might be kind of a cool thing to start doing for the channel, is take a look at an artist, draw something kind of in their style. You know, whether it's Geiger, or, I don't really know how to say his name, but Basinski or Bakinski, who did just awesome. Both of them kind of did somewhat biomechanical stuff. Geiger more so. Bakinski is more like just bio, no mechanical, just weird biology going on and incorporated into buildings and stuff. It's very cool. And I love that. Plus, he seemed to have an interesting kind of fascination with hands, maybe. And I sort of have the same. I add hands to a lot of my stuff. I have to turn around and grab. So when I want to just lift, I just take a Q-tip here and I put water on the page, and that'll pull a little because I just want that brighter green. Just this light green is pretty opaque too, so if I put that on the top, that's something you find with certain watercolors, is they just respond better. And you really only learn it from using, like, oh, that actually turns out pretty opaque when I use that. Which opaque, if you don't know, is a term for basically the opposite of transparent. Which watercolor by default is pretty transparent. So this is the green color I'm using. It's this French watercolor, phthalo green. Oh, it's really stuck on there. It's kind of painful. But I used all of the stuff up on my palette. These brushes are Princeton Aqua Elite brushes. I think they're pretty darn good. My mom works at she's now retired, but she worked at a arts and crafts store. And these were the most expensive brushes they carried. So I bought them when she had a employee sale. So I was pretty fortunate. Let's see. We probably want it a little lighter up here, kind of on the upper shoulder region. Sort of deciding if I want to add this branch. I did add it in my drawing. Maybe I'd just make it brown. Maybe I could do like little green mossy stuff coming off of it. That might look cool. So I had too much pigment on here. So I'm just going to lift some. At first I thought I was above using these markers, these watercolor markers, but they are really precise, and you can kind of go in and, maybe it's not true watercolor, but you can, and I have a whole range of colors over there, but you can add spot highlights, which work really well. And you could go back and re-wet this too. So now I'm trying to mind, since I have a more accurate tool, I'm actually trying to mind how some of this might look. I have a pink one I use all the time when I'm doing flesh to kind of get the slight rosy tint to pale skin. All I'll do is just add a very thin line right at the edge of the cheekbone or something like that, and it really seems to help. I'm going to use my kneaded eraser here to lift some of these pencils. I don't typically like to leave them on there. I kind of forgot. It's not such a big deal here. There's a little bit in here. I don't know if it'll get lifted out or not. Kind of did. It also will take a little color with it, which, you know, you can use to your advantage sometimes. See, I have this dark green here too, and kind of a yellow, a lime, and a dark. So gives it more depth. Because that's really what your shadow should be, is, you know, the color overall of what you're working on. Sometimes with watercolors, you just have a really tough time having your shadow colors stay as dark as you were hoping they would. The other nice thing too is this is like a hack or a cheat or a trick I do all the time, is I'm not accurate with what I'm doing here. I'll let the green get on the very edge of what I'm doing. That way it kind of creates the cylinder-like effect if you have the lighter color to the darker color. Let's see what this yellow one looks like. Because I want a host of green colors in here just to add variety. These also actually have really nice tips on them. You can like carve out what you're trying to do, almost like a micron if you're just being careful and skillful with it. Plus with the water already on the page, it actually bleeds a little, and I don't know, it just helps refine what we were doing here, because it's taking something that was really loose and just giving it a bit of shape. And like I said, if you run it over the edge of your form, just a smidge, I think it helps add dimension to it. I'm looking over at my drawing now to see how I made some of the shapes here. My drawing is much bigger. This is 8 by 11, I think, and this is 11 by 14. Now this must be 8 by 12, or 9 by 12. It's a little taller than that is wide, but all right. I'm going to start working on the shadow shape of the leg again. So I have a dark green there. Let's see. I'm going to add the brownish purple to it. Just a thin glaze over the top to see what happens. Same with down here. And I'm going to try that move, like I said, that Ito Scares Me does, where he kind of wets a shadow down and then blasts a color into it. Like I said, I've only observed it by watching his time lapses. I have no mastery over it. So let me throw a green in there. So we got green, purple, and brown. I at least think it looks kind of swampy. Which I do feel like this experimentation is kind of the whole point of watercolors, mixing on the page, seeing what happens. I'm going to go back through and run this over the edge to... This is kind of like kneecap here. And so there's a little bit of a muscular form there. And in theory, there should be one more like here. I'm just going to move that out of the way. So you can wet your brush, dry it pretty good, and then just put it on the page and dab up some color. Help give it some form again. And so I want it darker beneath that for the contrast, so I'm just going to go right in here and something like that. Maybe I should think about starting to add some blue. All right, I'm going to pause. All right, guys. My camera cut out. All I did was kind of paint in blue here, and I've gone back and added variations of yellows and greens to kind of start bringing out some variation in the vine. I want it to look like kind of mossy and shiny in some areas. So now I have this tree that I've loosely painted in back here, and I'm going to do it, I think I'm going to do kind of a brown and purple mix. And we'll just see what happens. The purple being to darken it up and just try and give it some depth. I'm going to let the watercolor aspect of it do a lot of the work and just see what happens randomly with blending. And try and avoid my foreground figure here as much as possible. All right, so I'm just going to go in with brown here. Maybe, yeah, I'll do brown, and I'll use that kind of purplish brown, and then I might just throw purple in there to keep darkening it up. So I'm just going to let it flow here. So our complementary color for green is kind of in the reddish orange, and maybe you could even veer a little towards a bluish purple, which isn't fully complementary, but it does have a nice pop. And so I think I'm going to do the background in kind of a reddish orange wash, like a sunset color. I was looking at other artists and what they tend to do for Swamp Thing, and they either kind of keep it all green to be in the swamp, or they bring in like the red for the sunset. All right, I'm going to add this purple brown into these runs here, just to darken it up from the foreground. I'm just going to let the water do the work, really. And I have this color called Amethyst Genuine, which is pretty opaque too. It's this purple here, which I just put on my palette. It's more opaque than this other purple here that I first used the other day. So I'm going to put that in some areas. You can see it's pretty pigmented, which I like. I use it a lot for shadow colors, deep shadow colors like in here. I said it might be too overpowering, but we'll see. And try and keep it more on the underside of this branch here and push it a little more towards the inside here as well. Grab a Q-tip and clean some of this up. No, that's right, I had this bump out here. It's kind of like a large burl, which burls are kind of these tumor-like growths that happen on the sides of trees. The wood grain of them, I worked in a wood shop, is very interesting. add that lighter brown again to the outside here to try and redefine the edge, especially to that burrow part, top up here, maybe through here too. All right, well that sorts itself out. I'm going to go back and try and make a slightly darker green for down here. In general, when you're like shading something, if you're using this whole figure like a circle with the light hitting up here, it should be kind of getting darker as it goes down. Highlight almost on the arm, which is reaching towards the light. I think that looks kind of bright like I want it to. But also like a little bit of this color up here on this shoulder. Maybe even down into the chest here a little bit. I just want that mossy and alive look. A little bit through here. It's going for pure yellow on the middle of this vine. All right, so I do need to work on this vine that's grabbing his arm over here. Let's see. I mean, it just needs a richer texture, richer color. So I'm gonna grab this yellow green and you could probably use some browns too. We'll just give it some variation. This is just a watercolor stick, and you just can kind of get it wet and pull color off of it. I find them really good. They last a long time. So my tree definitely needs more brown in it. And I'm just going to add some black to darken up this brown. Maybe I should just go, well, I'm just kind of stuck right now. I definitely want it darker on his head. It'll help it pop. And if it's closer to purple, then that's reasonable because that works fairly well as a complementary color. All right, so now I'm going to start with red at the top. For the sunset sort of look. If I was more confident, I would start with backgrounds and then move to my figure in the front, because this painting around it is pretty annoying and just makes the job a lot more difficult. I also wish I was a lot more confident just to leave white space. I don't ever know where to just leave white space at. See, some people might just like paint a tree and then maybe this much of a light source or something and leave all that white. And I can just never make that decision. Just trying to get the red a little stronger at the top, and then I'm going to start, which I guess I'll start doing now, taking yellow and running it through there to make the orange and carrying it down. Get a more saturated orangey yellow over here too. My water dried up down here. Sure it did through here as well, so. Some yellow in here. And I'm gonna, to make the foreground stand out again, I kind of have these mossy or just green tufts in here, like his body's exerting stuff. So I'm gonna paint these in, kind of hope that they help draw the foreground a little bit. Maybe a little bit of yellow in there too, connecting this area. Keep trying to layer up this tree a little bit. It's hard. I don't think it really reads like a tree. Which, you know, I suppose just happens sometimes. It's probably what I get for not explicitly drawing it out super well. Maybe this side should be a touch darker. How would I want to darken that? Maybe I'll just go with like, gosh, I don't know. I might try a little Payne's gray here. Just a little like over. Just to add a little bit muddier. That way the attention kind of stays through here. Yes, I'm going to keep adding a little Payne's gray, just very little. This is a fairly opaque color as far as watercolors go, at least in my experience. I don't want to make it sound like I know what I'm doing. Like I said, I don't really care about the bleeds. I think it tends to look pretty cool, so. Try and just use this drier brush look to drag it down. Alright guys, I'm going to tinker with it more after it dries, but I think for the purpose of this video it's going to be done. I guess what I can do, see, I don't know if this white eye is adding a lot or not. I drew it that way when I inked it, but the character himself has red eyes. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this to which red is kind of the true opposite of the greens. So I understand why they went with red eyes. I'll let it dry. All right, yep, I'm gonna let it dry. Well, thanks for watching. This video is gonna be a couple days late into New Year, but I just wanted to get started on the watercolor before the New Year ended. So thanks for watching. Hope to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.